Hello, welcome to Spread Book Joy. Today I want to talk to you about Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. If you're new to my channel, I'm Jack. If you're not new, welcome back to my channel. This is the third recording of this review that I've done because the last one, for some reason, was slow-mo. So when I played it back, I was talking like this. Such a nightmare. So hopefully this one will be much more practiced and polished than the last two that I filmed. So if you're new to the channel, you'll not know, but I was taking part in Jane Austen July, and this was the only Jane Austen book I managed to finish in July. I've got a couple of beautiful editions, so I just want to show them to you. So the first is this gorgeous vintage classics edition, which has got a lovely quote on the back from it. So I've got a full set of these beautiful vintage classics editions of Jane Austen, and I've got this gorgeous penguin classics edition here as well, which I bought thinking, oh, I'm going to do some annotating, I'm going to annotate while I read, and I didn't do that because I did a buddy read with Claudia from Spinster's library, and she was listening to the audiobook, and it was read by Juliet Stevenson, who I absolutely love reading Jane Austen's work. I'm going to highly recommend that audiobook to you if you are not someone who listens to classics, who reads classics often, finds them quite dry and difficult to get into. I really recommend, if you can focus on an audiobook, listening to an audiobook, because the actors that they get to do classics are often fabulous and really talented, often quite famous actors who bring characters and the situations to life and make them feel really lively and fresh. And Juliet Stevenson is no exception. Her interpretation of the characters' behaviours and mannerisms, just fabulous and really laugh out loud funny. So yeah, we listened to the audiobook, and it was conveniently split into 16 audio chapters. The book itself has 31 chapters, so it was a couple of physical chapters for each audio chapter. So we listened to a chapter a day, and some days listened to more because they were quite short, and we managed to do a nice read over 2 weeks and give our thoughts at the end of the day. It really enhanced my reading, and it's the first buddy read that I've taken part in that I've actually really thoroughly enjoyed and where I got a lot out of it. So yeah, thanks Claudia for that. She's going to put up her review. She had read the book before, so she has a prior review video which I'll link in the description box, but she's going to update it, I think, and if she does, I'll update the video link in my description box for you. So I'm going to try and split my review into spoiler and non-spoiler parts. So the non-spoiler review, I really loved Northanger Abbey. I've read so many reviews and watched so many lukewarm videos about Northanger Abbey where people either think it's too immature, like it's her early work and it reads like it's early work, or they just weren't really fussed about the story, because I suppose it doesn't go into some of the deeper themes and sort of character behaviours and things that of something as well polished as, say, Emma or whatever. But I think it's very underrated Jane Austen novel. I think it was brilliant. I really enjoyed it. I was highly entertained the whole way through. I wanted to know what was going on. I loved the characters. I loved the disgusting characters that were in this book, as well as, because Jane Austen's bad characters are her best characters, right? She writes bad really well. So I loved her. This is a really descriptive novel, I found, considering Jane Austen's famous for her sort of work through character and dialogue, and we don't really get much description in her books, but this book I got a real sense of place and time from this book. So if you're not familiar with the story, I'm rambling on about it, I haven't even given a synopsis. Northanger Abbey is set in Bath, and the Northanger Abbey of the title, we meet Catherine Moorland, who's our 17-year-old protagonist, Jane Austen's youngest protagonist, and she is a young, innocent, pretty young girl who is taken to Bath by her friends, the Allens, Mr. and Mrs. Allen, who are a rich older couple who live in the tiny village that she lives in, and she's not been out in society in a big town like Bath before, so she's taken to Bath, which in the Regency period is party town. It's where people go to have a good time, to take the waters for their health, because of course Bath is a spa town. And in the evenings they go to the theatre, they go to assemblies and balls, and generally have a wonderful time. So Catherine's taken off here. She's 17. She has the time of her life, because as you can imagine, when you're 17, that's what you want to do. Parties, nights out. It's just a wonderful time for her. So while she's there, she meets a family called the Tilneys, and she's invited to stay at their home, Northanger Abbey. So one thing I didn't mention, Catherine is obsessed with novels. So this is often called a parody, like Jane Austen's parody of the Gothic novel. It is far more than that. It's not just a parody of the Gothic novel, as far as I'm concerned. I think it's just a love letter to books and novels in general. And Catherine Moorland, the main character, would definitely have a booktube channel. In fact, Claudia mentioned, when I said that to Claudia, she said that there's a booktuber who, for Jane Austen July, has created videos of Catherine Moorland's booktube channel, which I am definitely going to watch, and I'll link that in the description box as well. But she loves books, and all she wants to do is chat to her friend about books. And at the time, you know, novels were considered probably in the same way that we would consider watching, you know, Love Island. You know, quite an empty occupation, but entertaining, and some people would say not very good for the young mind. So that's kind of, this book really examines the different viewpoints about books in the Regency period, and there's a really spirited defence of the novel by Jane Austen, directly addressing the reader in this book. So in terms of non-spoilery things, like I said, I loved how descriptive it was. I thought there were some really good vivid descriptions of action and things that happen in the book that we don't normally get treated to in Jane Austen, and I really loved it. I thought it was very funny. I really enjoyed it, and I know a lot of people think it's obviously it's an early work of hers. I don't think so. I think there is a youthful energy about the book because of the age of the protagonist. It's very light-hearted. It's not quite as serious. I mean, lots of Jane Austen is quite light-hearted, but there are often serious points in a Jane Austen book. But this felt, you know, just lots and lots of fun. I really enjoyed it. Not a perfect book by any stretch of the imagination, and I will go into a bit more why I didn't think it was perfect when I talk about spoilers, because I feel like I'm really censoring what I want to say here because I don't want to spoil the novel for anyone. So if you don't want spoilers, skip to the end now for my wrap up, but I'm going to put timestamps in the description box so you can skip out the spoiler section. So in terms of the characters, I absolutely adored the awful character, because John Thorpe is a university friend of her brother James, and they've turned up in Bath, and along with John's sister Isabella, and he's got three sisters as it turns out, but I'll talk about background characters in a moment, because that was one of the issues maybe that I might have had with the book. But John Thorpe is awful. He's just so full of himself. He's constantly showing off. He's doing a constant one-upmanship. If someone says, you know, whatever they do, whatever they're talking about, he's done it bigger, better. He's so obnoxious, and just deliciously obnoxious, and just constantly trying to dominate Catherine's time, making sure that he wants to do all these dances with her. And I just found myself yelling every time he was doing stuff. He tries to monopolise her time, and at one point when she's trying to go out for a walk with her friends, the Tilneys that she meets, he's like, oh no, I've told them you can't come. I just thought, yeah, really drove me insane. And his sister Isabella is so conniving and scheming. She's really just using Catherine to get to Catherine's brother James, and yeah, she's just awful people. Written really well. Mrs. Allen is very, very funny. She's very vapid and constantly just obsessed with what people are wearing and their clothes, which I thought was really hilarious. And yeah, I loved the terrible characters, the characters with real... Oh, and General Tilney, sorry, the parent, like, so Isabella and Henry Tilney, not Isabella, I keep mixing them up. Eleanor and Henry Tilney, so Henry Tilney being the leading male protagonist in the book, the leading man. He's wonderful. I really liked him. I liked the way he was written, and actually I think he's a really very modern leading man, and I feel like because he's got charm and humour, he pokes fun at Catherine but in a really kind of affectionate way, and he's we see more of him and Catherine's conversations than we do of any other couple in Austen. Like you see their romance blossoming, you see them talking to each other in these really sweet little scenes together. And it was Claudia who pointed that out to me. She said that we don't see as much of two leading characters getting together and their romance blossoming as we do in Northanger Abbey, Catherine and Henry. General Tilney had us wondering a little bit about him all the time, because he was, really quite controlling, domineering, abusive behaviour from him. And at the very end, when he throws poor Catherine out, when he discovers, after inviting her to Northanger because he thinks she's rich, then discovers she's not and throws her out on her ear and gets his daughter Isabella to do it. That scene, I was just so embarrassed for both of them, felt so sorry for both of them. But I do love, like I said, the action scene that I was talking about, when Catherine when Catherine goes to Northanger Abbey and she starts, because she reads so many books and her imagination's going into overdrive and she's in this really gothic house, she starts to wonder what's happened to Tilney's mother, who has passed away, and she starts to suspect that General Tilney has killed his wife. So she's like seeing all these gothic horror tropes everywhere, and then one night there's a storm and she finds like a cupboard and she finds something in the cupboard, and it's just hilarious. But what I found was it was one of the most really kind of descriptive action sequences in Austen. Like, you're there with her while she's discovering these things, and then she dives under the covers and she's frightened. And I thought it was really, really different and for Austen, and I really enjoyed it. And the other thing was when Jane Austen directly addresses the reader and does this sort of spirited defence of novels and berates novel writers who don't defend the novel, who don't celebrate the novel in their own work. I thought it was very fascinating. The things that I didn't like were the rushed ending, and I know I've watched some reviews by Marilyn Meyer Mendoza and Gina Stania, not of this but of Persuasion, and they had a similar issue with the ending. I just felt cheated out of watching the proposal scene and seeing it all wrapped up properly, and it was just wrapped up very, very quickly, and we were told things rather than shown them, so that kind of knocked it down from being perfect for me. And also several of the characters were quite cardboardy, like two-dimensional, so we didn't really get a sense of them apart from them being there for the plot, possibly. Frederick Tilney, who's the older brother of Eleanor and Henry, he was just sort of plot convenience. Claudia and I mentioned talking about him, you didn't really get to know a sense of him. And also I was really happy that Eleanor got away from her really domineering father, but as Claudia pointed out to me, it's like, where did this baron suddenly appear from that she's got married to? That suddenly happened and we were just told about it. So there were, it's not a perfect book, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was wonderful. I was pleasantly surprised given all the sort of lukewarm reviews I see of it around. So, have you read Northanger Abbey? What do you think of it? I think it's a divisive Jane Austen novel, and so let's get into it in the comments below and see what people really think about it. I don't know if I'd mentioned, but I think Henry Tilney is a really excellent leading man. I think he could be in a modern rom-com because he's not like the other leading men who I adore Mr. Darcy, I adore Captain Wentworth, but they're very serious, they're very old-timey, they're very old-fashioned leading men. And I think Henry Tilney's got that charm and wit and humour and just loveliness about him. I think he could be a modern leading man. Anyway, let's get into it in the description. Let's get into it in the comments. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on Northanger Abbey, and I can't wait to do my ranking video. I did think it was going to rank quite highly, but maybe not, because some of her other works are just fantastic and pretty perfect in my estimation. So let me know what you thought. If you like this rambling review, please consider clicking like. If you're new here, consider subscribing, and hopefully I will see you again here soon. Oh, if you want a better review of this book, you can pop on over to Claudia at Spinster's Library, because I'm sure she'll have some very well-structured thoughts to give you. But if you like this, please consider subscribing and popping back, and hopefully I'll see you again here soon. Bye!